bright, adaptable, and just in general what we call smart. The influence is extremely inventive and is the originator of all cunning schemes and devices. It is what men term bright and witty. It is that which makes the live man of commerce and constitutes the leading influence embodied within that sharp, clever, and chameleon-like individual who makes a fortune in the real estate business. This energy corresponds to the violet ray of the solar spectrum. The plane upon which we live, move, and have our being absorbs an energy which we as inhabitants cannot by nature fully understand or appreciate, because we only receive this energy as an astral influx by action of the moon, being the closest heaven to the earth. This influence, so far as we, the planet's offspring, are concerned, is neither good nor evil, because it is part and parcel of ourselves, which we are all balanced, good and evil. What the influence may be upon the inhabitants of other worlds, we can't say. Therefore, when speaking astrologically, we credit the moon's power and speak of that body as containing our Earth's attribute of the solar ray. This is why I often refer to the moon's energy as being very mysterious, because we don't really understand what it is. It just represents the Earth's energy. It just relays it back to us. This is why it often represents nature. And as you probably guessed, since it does reflect the Earth's energy back, the color that would best represent that is green. Therefore, the moon represents the green ray of the solar spectrum. These 7 personalities, energies, are a fragmentation of the one divine consciousness. We see a representation of this when we observe light passing through a prism, which then splits into the 7 colors of the spectrum. Put simply, the personality of this divine consciousness or God is made up of these 7 energies. Again, we refer to it as the Elohim. Our souls are granted some of each of these 7 energies while descending through the spheres. Again, some more than others, and thus we are comprised of the energy of God. The understanding that one must come to here is that we are all God, experiencing itself individually, each with different combinations of these 7 personalities, creating our own unique one. With regards to color, combining all the energies together, we get a Roy G. Biv rainbow. A rainbow thus represents the Elohim and is regarded as a sign of God for this reason. These 7 energies are what make up our personalities. As we descend Jacob's ladder, as it is also called, our soul takes in these energies and thus applies them to our outward personality once we take physical form. So picture your soul at the top of the dome, so to speak, right before entering into the spiritual spheres leading down toward the earth. You have not yet developed your personality, so you do not know what energies will resonate with your being. Speaking upon this, Burgoyne states that the soul does not actively absorb all of the energies. It absorbs some more than others, or not at all. He explains, in fact, the soul monad at that particular stage of the journey passed through a kind of impersonal coma instead of an active life. This was because there was but little affinity between itself and the planet. A person, for instance, who is very passive and strongly averse to any combative situation and fighting likely experiences this coma through the sphere of Mars, the 5th heaven. That soul, thus, does not take in as much or any of the energy of that sphere. So when they are born outwardly in the physical, they do not have a lot of that energy. They might, they avoid combative situations. It is not known what causes that coma to take place, whether it is a conscious decision on part of the soul or it just happens randomly. But nonetheless, it's what gives each of us our unique personalities upon birth. The positions of the planets in your birth chart reflect this. For example, a very fiery individual who is passionate, active, and maybe combative will likely have a very strong Mars in their chart, which basically means that Mars was occupying a position in the sky that synchronized with this energy, that made it happy, so to speak. Mars being in Aries is a prime example, as the energy of Aries meshes with that of Mars. So a soul who had an active experience through the fifth heaven of Mars will likely be born while Mars is in a desirable position in the sky, reflected in the birth chart, and will have the energy of Mars present in their personality. Regarding birth charts, this is a good way if you're wondering what your experience was prior to birth, and if you're looking for an explanation of your personality, it's really a good way to go. Basically, it's a snapshot of the planets in the sky right when you're born, which reflects which energies you absorbed as you evolved through the seven spheres. Each planet has a positive and negative aspect. So, for instance, if the sun is negatively aspected, this is a completely different topic that could be covered in a different video, but if it's negatively aspected, you'd get the negative aspects of the sun. The positive aspects being that of, noble leadership, someone who has ambition. On the negative end, might be egotistical, might be like a bit of a tyrant. Venus, for instance, positive aspects. You could be very friendly and very loving. On the negative end, though, be very lustful, maybe a rapist. I mean, each one of these planets has that duality. And if you want to learn planets that you have and what polarity they are, and which they are influencing you positively or negatively, and whether they are strong or weak, you look at your birth chart. And you look at the essential dignities of the planets by Ptolemy. That's a very good chart. Or it gives you an idea of which planet is the strongest by ascribing points to it. And whichever planet has the most points is the one that is the strongest in your birth chart and most present in your personality, and also represents the sphere that you were most active in during your involution. We are speaking of human personalities here, but understand that the human form is not instantly achieved. When the soul descends out of this first sphere of the moon, according to the Light of Egypt, you then enter into a cycle of reincarnation through the mineral, vegetable, and animal forms on the earth. This is generally what people define the transmigration as, what it means to transmigrate. This is this reincarnation. So once we incarnate into the material, we enter into the absolute lowest point on the cycle of involution and evolution, the cycle of necessity. It is the mineral state. Reincarnation takes place throughout this plane, and also the vegetable and the animal plane. But once the human form is achieved, that is it. Reincarnation does not continue. From death of the human body, we are destined to ascend back up through the seven spheres from which we came. Again, it cannot be stressed enough. Human reincarnation is a complete deception. This isn't to say that human reincarnation is impossible, but what it is saying is that you should not do it. And if it happens, it happened because you got deceived. Regarding this, Burgoyne states, the sphere of reincarnation, embracing the birth in an external form, its transient life there, its death, and then the same soul's rebirth in a higher and more perfect form of life, is really comprised between the mineral plane and man, but he means it stops at man. He explains that later. Between these two planes, the soul must pass through countless forms and phases. It is an absolute truth that as an impersonal being, man lives upon many earths before he reaches this one. Speaking upon human reincarnation, he states that the talented author of Art, Magic, and Ghostland, who for years had investigated the various unseen realms of life for himself, gives the world the brief results of his lifelong research in the latter work. Speaking upon reincarnation, this author says, to my dim apprehension, and in view of my long years of wandering through spirit spheres, where teaching spirits and blessed angels guided my soul's ardent explorations, this brief summary of our pre-existent states explains all that the reincarnationists have labored so sedulously to theorize upon. The universal and reiterated assertions of myriads of spirits in every stage of a progressive beyond convinced me that there was no return to mortal birth, No retrogression in the scale of cosmic being, as a return to a material incarnation undoubtedly would be. And all the demands of progress, justice, and advancement are supplied by the opportunities offered the soul in the sphere of spiritual existence.